be one of the things that we want. And I hope that there are people in this room and people on the Zoom call that will participate in that community work group, because I think it'll be very important, the future of our community. So that's kind of what the year was. I'm going to talk just really briefly about some of the things that we're facing this year. First of all, one of our biggest challenges is staffing. What we've got going in our favor is we offer good job security, and it's a nice place to work. But problem is we're remote, so we're away from any real population densities. It's a highly competitive market for talent, as you all know. It's hard. Talk to Matt at the hotel. They're just struggling to keep staff on. Our group is small. There's not a lot of opportunity for growth for someone that comes here. So our pay levels are below market. Now, our budget this year will bring a step in the right direction, but it brings our pay levels to about a 2019 level. And with what's going on with inflation and things, there's going to be more pressure on compensation. So it's going to be really important for David and team to really focus on what we can do to recruit and retain employees. So that's going to be a big challenge. The next big challenge, obviously, is inflation. It says the government reports that you'll read, you'll say that's 8.5. It's maybe as high as 10. In building materials and the things that it takes to drive this community on the back end, we're probably looking at someplace between 40 and 60%. Some things such as fuel and that sort of thing are over 100%. So as we look at our budgets next year, it's going to be important to remember that inflation is going to be something that we're going to have to get our arms around and deal with. Another thing that I think is going to be important for us to deal with is the SRA and the NHOA CCNR conflicts. SRA CCNRs in themselves are loaded with conflicts. When you overlay that over the NHOA CCNRs, there's definitely conflicts. So we're really going to take a two-step approach to how to deal with that. The first one is back at our September board meeting, we postponed dealing with the amendment to the CCNRs on maintenance management. We're going to take that back up. We feel it's important that we take all of the common maintenance elements throughout the community and normalize them in our SRA responsibilities. We have the channel to do that in 5.01 of our CCNRs. And so we think that it's important to get that done. I can't tell you how many times Dan wastes time trying to figure out whether it's something that is his responsibility or if it's something that he shouldn't be putting his hands on. And there's mistakes made. We're open to criticism when mistakes do get made, and things have been done historically one way that is not according to maybe what is laid out in our CCNRs. It's something that should have been dealt with in 1997. I mean, the conflicts in our board meeting minutes and in our AGM minutes go back and start in the mid-90s. And it's just continual since then. So this board feels that it's better to fix things than let things just continue to fester. So that's something that will be done with this. The second step, of course, is what I just mentioned, and that will be the community work group. So to take on the equity issue as it relates to the various different communities. Second thing that has to be dealt with this year is the Boundary Ridge flooding. I don't know how many of you know to the extent that we had flooding, but we had a number of homes that were flooded dramatically. I mean, there was a river flowing across Semiahmoo Drive into homes, down Shearwater, into Chickadee. There was a lot of erosion that occurred. And so shortly after, we were informed that there's a group of homeowners that are planning to sue SRA and the city if it didn't get fixed. So what we did as a board is we said, okay, well, let's figure out what the problem is here, because this is an issue, again, that goes back to documented history, goes back to 2015. The chatter that we heard is that it goes back even further to that, to maybe 2008, 2010. It's been a consistent problem out in Boundary Ridge. So why do we have flooding out in Boundary Ridge? So what we did is we said, well, let's make sure that our system is built right. So we surveyed the system. We found that it was built according to spec as designed and approved by the city. That system was designed to accommodate floodwater, stormwater from the Boundary Ridge community in a 25-year event. Well, 25-year events now are quite common, and 100-year events are now kind of the big storm. Last year's storm was probably in excess of 2 100-year events back to back. So it was a big event. So we said, okay, if our storm sewer was designed and installed right, let's make sure that there aren't plugs, that it's not plugged. So we had it scoped. It was open and clean. Our catch basins were full, but we're having them cleaned out now. The minor amount of gravel that was in those pipes has been cleaned. So we determined how much water does that capacity have the ability to handle. So we figured that out. Then we determined how much water was actually being generated in Boundary Ridge. So our engineer said, this system is marginally adequate to handle a 100-year storm for Boundary Ridge. But the problem is that right in front of the SRA office building, there's a city ditch there that drains 90-acre drainage basin. That 90-acre of surface water comes into that ditch, goes through a 12-inch conduit, and is put into the first catch basin in the Boundary Ridge stormwater system. It puts enough water in at that point to overpower the entire system. More water enters than the system was designed to accommodate. So in a big storm, we've got a real problem. So we went to the city. It took us to June to get the city to actually come to the table with their lawyers and the city manager. Fortunately, the city manager and the city left. We got a new interim city manager that says, yeah, we recognize that is a problem. We need to fix it. We all need to fix it. We need to figure out what the next steps are. So what we've done is we figured out what a good solution is. It's not a real expensive solution, but it's more than it's probably someplace between a $300,000 and $500,000 fix. What we're going to do, and what we've asked 2 different lawyers for legal opinion. What our liabilities are, because in our CCNRs it says, hey, we're not liable. We have language in there that basically says it's exculpatory. It's not our problem. So we said to our lawyers, are we liable or not? One lawyer said, well, according to California law, we're good, no problem. The other lawyer, who works with stormwater systems and is more of a litigation attorney for these kind of issues, said, oh, you definitely have a problem. This is a SRA problem. Because you channel water, you're considered a utility, and when you're considered a utility, you're responsible. So we got with the community, the people that were flooded and that are promoting the lawsuit, and we said, look, we're going to. Here's what we're going to do. We have issues as it relates to what we can do financially within our CCNRs, but we're taking this on really on 2 tacks. We're going to do an interim solution, which will go before the board on Monday. If anybody wants to listen in, we're going to talk about the fact that we're going to build a inexpensive temporary system that will divert the water down to the beach underneath the staircase. It's temporary. It's something that we're going to do to avoid being sued by a bunch of really angry residents. And it's not just a lawsuit about a damaged basement. It's a lawsuit over, we could lose a couple of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million homes over the edge if the erosion that occurred last year occurs a couple more times. So it's a very serious issue. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to build a temporary system. That system is going to cost maybe someplace between $25,000 and $35,000. We'll follow the requirements to inform the community. That's what we're going to do. And then we're going to be meeting with the lawyers, our lawyer, the lawyer that represents the homeowners, the C-Smoke lawyers are going to meet with the city and the county and basically tell them, look, it's a lawsuit coming or you've got to fix this. And we think that the city's in a posture to probably want to walk with the county to get that fixed, because it's much a county problem as it is a city problem. So we think that that's, the only way that we can really get to resolution on it and fix a problem that's been a problem for a long time. So the other issue is the recreation easement. This is the last thing I've got on my list, so I'm just about done. Is as you all probably have walked the path, the recreation easement along the beach down by Drayton Harbor. Last winter in the storms, there was just a huge landslide that came down and covered probably 8 to 10 feet of mud and roots and trees and stuff, covered that recreation easement. It's an easement, it's not dedicated right of way. The easement requires us to maintain that in near original condition. It's something that's recorded in the plats. So it's just something that we're required to take care of. Well, what we've done, we've met with the city, we've met with lawyers, we've met with engineers, everything. We think we know what we can do, but what we want to do is go back to the city and say, look, let's allow us to put a natural path through here, not clean this out, so that it can actually be enjoyed. It'll probably have to be closed during the rainy season because those slides are still prone to happen there. But the bigger problem that it created is that it really made access to our bioswales that are down under Drayton Hillside almost inaccessible. And we can't come in from that direction anymore. We do have in the plat, there's verbiage that says that the owner of the lot that is right there next to the bioswale has to grant us easement, has to grant us access across that. It's not the best. They're trying to sell that. Somebody's going to build a house on that. It's not a lot that it really provides the ability to create kind of a utility driveway down through there to get big heavy trucks and equipment down there. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with this year. So those are kind of the big challenges I think ahead of us. I want to thank my fellow board members for the effort that they put in this year. These guys, some of the best people I've ever met and are really competent and really make a difference to our community. So with that, I want to thank you again for being here. I hope that you'll participate in some of our committees. Our committees are full of some really great leaders and they make a difference here. So.
Yeah. Could you please repeat one thing? I'm sorry, Zoom audio dropped out when you were talking about the equity issue in the previous slide, and we had some people online that missed that and asked if you would repeat what it was that you had said, because Zoom just dropped out for everybody.
What we as a group have, the board has put a committee together to put an agenda and a schedule together for creating a community-wide work group that's going to take up the equity issue, not just down here on the spit, but throughout our whole community, because it is a structural issue. It's not a dues issue. It's a structural issue that has to be dealt with. I think it's important because it's not just Pacific Point. I think all of the condominium communities down here on the spit have concerns about that equity issue. So I think it's something that is worth taking up. It's worth discussing on a community-wide basis. So that's what our plan is. All right. With that, I'm going to turn this back over to David. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Sure, we're on here. Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, this is my report. It says general manager's report. So thank you very much, Doug, for giving all that information to everyone. we're going to start off here by just reviewing the team. We've got maintenance up here first. Just going to go over who's on our maintenance team. It doesn't take too long since there's only 3 of them. We have Dan Rudolph, who is our director. He is also a member of the community, which Dan has a very interesting perspective. He's both staff and a member, sees things from a point of view that probably many people have not had the opportunity. And Dan has done an exceptional job as the director of maintenance, and he's always thinking from not only the point of view of the director, but as a member. And so I don't think we could find a better person to be in that position. Leroy Dougal, you see there on the right-hand side. I asked Leroy if he was smiling in that, and that is a smile from Leroy. Leroy, long time City of Blaine Department of Public Works worker, supervisor. Leroy literally knows where the bodies are buried all throughout Blaine. And so he has been really just an amazing resource to have him on our staff. Blaine would love to have him back. And then Mike Larson, he's our longest serving. I think he's the longest serving employee. Well, Lori came back. So, but he's been here for a couple of years now. And Mike he does an excellent job. And so again, I just wanted to kind of point this out. We have 3 people, 3 maintenance men. Mike was out earlier this year with COVID, and that left us 2. So imagine your maintenance department, anything that you do, and you lose 1/3 of your workforce. That's what happens when one guy doesn't show up. And so we found out, and I think this is an interesting key performance indicator. I like those. Dan had the unenviable task of going and having to go around and do the dog waste stations in Mike's absence. And that turned out to be, for that week that he was gone, about 300 pounds. If we take that and we multiply it by 4, that's 1,200 pounds a month. That's 14,000 pounds a year, or 7 tons of dog waste that Mike takes care of for the community. So, yeah, interesting key performance indicator. I thought it was very interesting. I love metrics, and that's one of them. So really, but the point I wanted to make is 3 guys. 1 guy's out. That's 2. And so that happens. And so when people are wondering, I'm just amazed at what these guys can accomplish. So my hat's off to them. They do a fantastic job. And then you have the same, I think, sort of performance in the administration. We have, myself, I've been here since January, and any successes that may be attributed to the office. February. See, that's this is what happens every day. So any successes that I enjoy are really to be bestowed upon these ladies in that slide. They do a fantastic job. When I got here in February, unfortunately, Lori wasn't here. She had just departed, and it was Justine and I. And Justine was really the person keeping SRA operating. Joe had kept the seat warm. Joe Salthy, thank you, Joe, for sitting in between Debbie and myself. But boy, was it a learning curve when I first got here. And we didn't get Lori until June. And so it feels as though we didn't start until probably July, really doing things. So it was a tough year, and a great staff, though, to help me tackle these problems. And I have to say, probably the biggest challenge is really the first bullet. I was hired in February to take the place of someone that had been here for 34 years, I believe. And I think you have to all kind of just step back and think about the institutional knowledge, I'm sure that Debbie Smith didn't even think about what she was doing when she came to work. She already knew it. She'd been doing it for 30 years. I feel like Fred Astaire dancing backwards in heels and trying to replace someone like that. So it was a challenge. And so it still is. I'm finding out things every single day. One of the other challenges that we had was when I got here, it would take me regularly about 45 minutes to boot up my laptop just to get started. And then probably, an hour into it, I'd have to restart it. And this went on for a while. And so Justine was experiencing the same problems I was. And same with Carol. Carol, if you're out there, it was just horrible. So we finally invested in some new laptops. We got Northwest Technologies to help us with our MS 365 accounts and manage our network. And since then, things have been just absolutely 100% uptime. We've been doing just great. So shortly after that, we got Lori back. We somehow managed to talk her back into coming into the team. And it was just an absolute, godsend. It was right straight from heaven. We had billing to do. We opened up a payment system, online payment system. I don't know if any of you have used that, but that's now available to the members. Hopefully we can even move people out of ACH, the automatic, and you can go in there and do it yourself and pay by credit card or a no cost ACH whenever you would like to. So that's available to all members. And with that too, I'd just like to point out, absolutely incredible from a community association manager's standpoint. We have one member out of about 850 that is 90 days in arrear. Just one. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. Most community associations seat about 3 to 5% is what we consider normal. And you get up to as high as 10% of your assessments in arrears in communities. So Semiahmoo is just fantastic. And that is so much less time. Coming from a community where the accounts receivable is much higher, there's a lot of staff time that is taken up by just chasing after those folks that haven't paid. So we get to spend that time doing other things, productive things for the community. Other things that we managed to do, developed a sort of a new budget process, bringing all kinds of budget spreadsheets together that were all linked, building the 10-year plan that Doug had mentioned. All those were, I think, time consuming, but very, I think, necessary endeavors that we had to do. One big one that we're working on, and one of the things that shocked me when I first got to Semiahmoo, it's been here for 35 years. Mature organization was really everybody had documents on their own laptops. It was all siloed. There wasn't a shared drive. Many of the documents were in boxes. And I didn't understand it at the time, but now I did. Somebody had mentioned this, that the offices had moved numerous times over the last few years. And I know for myself, I rebuilt my house 20 years ago and I still haven't put trim in a couple of the places. So, I can imagine that this office was just, you move, and then you got to move, and then you move. And so we started this project of building a file structure and a shared drive and starting to migrate all of the individual files from all the individual laptops with a standard naming protocol and getting all of that in line. And Justine has spent a bunch of time putting together all of these documents in boxes and putting them into searchable PDFs so we can find information when we need it. So that is an ongoing project. That's going to take some time, but we've made strides, and it really does. It's looking good, and it's very, very helpful. I think that's going to pay dividends as we move forward and being able to find the information that we need. So on the maintenance side, we have, I mentioned earlier in previous slides, some of the things happening in maintenance. There's just too many things that happen in maintenance to mention in my report here. I think we're going to save that for the maintenance committee report that's coming up. One of the things that's been done at Semiahmoo, seems to be a tradition, is to show you how many home sales we've had, because that's something that happens in the office. We assist with all the escrow work that's done, and providing documents to both title and the new owners. And so you can see last year, 2020 to 2021, we had 149 home sales. That's a lot. You're talking 12 a month. I'm sure that's all you did, Lori, was probably filled out all of the payoff requests and things like that. Then 1920, if you go back another year, there was 83, and then 18 to 19, you had 76. This year, we are sitting at 59 since the previous, so it's slowed down quite a bit, almost half of what there was reported from the previous year. And I thought this was interesting. When you looked at that over the last 5 years, 43% of the homes or apartments, units, condominiums have turned over. Now, I'm sure there's probably some people who moved from a single family home into a condo or vice versa, but that's a pretty surprising statistic to me. So just everybody's been sitting here, maybe we can get a little exercise. How many of you out there have been in Semiahmoo for 1 year or less? Anybody? 1, 2? Okay. Online, can people show their hands online? If you can. No, yeah, but they could raise their hands. All right, so let's do this one. How about 5 years? Have you been in Semiahmoo for 5 years or less? So those people, okay, that's pretty good. How many people have been here for 20 years or more? Wow, that's surprising. I would have thought there would have been more hands there. Okay, all right. Well, but just to show you, there's a renewal ongoing in the community. We are having people. I mean, Semiahmoo it's being discovered. It may have been sort of maybe forgotten back in the Great Recession, but from the community that I just came from down in La Conner, everybody that was moving into that community was from Seattle, Mercer Island, Bellevue. They weren't from very far, but they were getting out of there and they were coming north. And I have a feeling that that's probably some of what's going on now. So, okay, I just thought it was an interesting slide to share with everybody. And with that, that's the end of my report. And we're going to move on to Jim Fitzsimmons and our treasurer report.
Yeah. This is the problem with being the tallest board member. I got to lean down to the microphone. Good morning. I'm Jim Fitzsimmons. I'm relatively new to Semiahmoo. I joined the board as treasurer in June of this year. And so this is my first AGM. So I'm kind of the new face on the board. So I'm going to be brief this morning. I'm going to start by just sort of orienting everyone to our accounting structure, and that'll help you sort of hear the rest of my presentation to kind of understand how we account for things at SRA. I'll touch briefly on our balance sheet. Then I'll talk about the 2023 budget. I'll give you some of the highlights of the budget, as well as discuss the dues assessment increase that we proposed. And then I'll end by telling you about the 2021 audit that was completed and our plans for auditing 2022 financials. Thanks. So from an accounting standpoint, there's really two elements of SRA, and each has its own separate dues assessment and funds flowing in to the fund, and also is accounted for in terms of use of money. And those two, there are two funds. The operating fund comprises financial resources that are earmarked to support general operations, including administration, David and his team, architectural review, landscaping, and day-to-day sort of maintenance work that's done in the community. The restricted reserve fund comprises financial resources that are dedicated to the repair and replacement of our major infrastructure, our major capital equipment and items like roads and gates and signs and stormwater systems. So when we talk about the budget, we'll kind of talk about each of those two funds and what the budget is next year for each of those funds. We'll quickly talk about our balance sheet. We have about a little over $1 million of cash in our bank accounts. The approximately $533,000 of that is in our operating fund. So that's cash that sits in the fund that would support annual operations. And $477,000 sits in the restricted reserve fund. So that's funds that would be used to pay capital equipment over a long period of time. As David mentioned, we had almost 100% compliance with paying dues this year. So our receivables balance is almost nothing. In our fixed assets, so the net value of the assets we have net of depreciation, these would be our trucks and our equipment and our computer systems and our building, is approximately $1.4 million. From the standpoint of debt, you're probably all aware that SRA took out a mortgage on the building when it was constructed. That original mortgage amount was $750,000. The current interest rate is 5%. At some point in the future, that interest rate can adjust, but for a while it'll stay at 5%. And the current loan balance is $664,000. We also have a $100,000 line of credit that we took out just sort of as a rainy day fallback vehicle for us. The line of credit has a 5.5% interest rate. We've never borrowed funds on that line of credit, and we don't intend to unless we absolutely had to. So now I'll talk about the plan for 2023, and I'll start with our operating plan. So the day-to-day operations of SRA. We project revenues of approximately $1.15 million. Revenues will be 30% higher than the 2022 forecasted revenues. And most of that increase will come from increases in dues. The other source of revenue for SRA is fees and transfer fees and fines and other revenue that comes in. We're actually expecting that to be about the same as it will be this year, but that is down this year, roughly 50% from what was originally projected to happen this year. So our revenues from other sources are down, which puts even more need to increase our dues assessments. Expenses, again, will be similar to the revenues, $1.15 million. That's 25% higher than the 2022 plan that was in place, and 31% higher than our forecasted expenditures for 2022. 74% of this increase is personnel-related spending, and there's really two initiatives. One, Doug mentioned, to increase our staff salaries to get them closer to market. It won't get them to market, but it will certainly move them in the right direction. And then we have one new hire that will join the team, and that hire will manage community relations and compliance. 10% of the increase is repair and maintenance spending. Inflation factors into that. And we're also catching up on some urgent deferred maintenance, tree removal, and stormwater system maintenance. And then 11% is increase in professional fees, legal expenses, land use consulting. Even though we've made great progress on some of the major issues that Doug mentioned, there's still more work to be done, and we'll still have to spend on experts to help us navigate and implement the decisions that we make. So on the restricted reserve side, then again, this is funds that go into paying for replacement and repair of our maintenance of our capital assets over a long-range plan. We will be assessing approximately $262,000 in 2023. That's almost double what was assessed in 2022. And Doug mentioned that we did a very thorough inputs study and then repeated our reserve study. So this increase will take us to an assessment level that will fund the capital plan that we updated, that is a 30-year plan for what's going to need to be done here. So we'll be on track to be fully funded for that new plan, and that required doubling the amount we assess annually. And then on the operating, and then the spending next year, what we did in that plan that I just talked about is we sort of front loaded the first 5 years. Spending is pretty higher than some of the spending in the later years to catch up on some things that are in desperate need of being replaced and repaired. So next year, we're actually spending almost $320,000. So over double what we will spend this year. And on this slide, you can see, maybe you can't see very well, but kind of what the buckets of spending are between roads and signs and stormwater systems, et cetera. So the assessment, the dues for 2023 are going up, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows. And the operating dues are going up approximately 30%. So for a lot with a home, about $1,300 next year. The restricted reserve assessment is going up 95%. That was the topic I was just discussing. So the total assessment is going up 39% next year. I'm sure you're all aware of that. So a home with on a lot in Semiahmoo will now pay $1,620. Last year, I believe, this year, the assessment was $1,168. Okay, next topic is audits. We did have our 2021 financial statements audited. I'm happy to tell you that we got a clean audit. There were no issues identified. And I can say, based on the audit, that the financial statements published for 2021 are fairly represent the situation at SRA and are free from any material misstatement. I do want the community to be aware, though, that the audit that was done was a bare bones audit. It was really an audit of financial statements. It wasn't a full audit that included coming in and looking at source documents and looking at how the accounting work is done in the staff and whether we have proper controls in place. And so if you look at the next, well, I'll get there in a minute. We're going to change that. Next year, we're going to do a little bit more comprehensive audit. The 2021 audit report is on the website, so I won't go to that today in this presentation. Just quickly, there we have our balance sheet and the discussion statement from the auditor. But if you're really interested, you can go to the website and read the entire audit report. So our plan for 2022, as I mentioned, is to do a little bit higher end audit. We're probably going to switch auditors, and we're going to audit our internal controls as well as our financial statements. And I think that that's probably a better way to give you confidence that everything at SRA is in control. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions later if you have them, or anytime after this meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, let's see. Got some stuff going on in here in Zoom we're trying to fix. Okay, well, it's time for committee reports. We have Steve Haynes coming up to talk about ASC. We're going to go in alphabetical order here. One of the things I want to mention about committees in general is any of you who are not on a committee right now, who are sitting in this room or at home listening, please consider joining a committee of the SRA. We have a bunch of them. If you have any special desires or skills, or you're interested in a topic, please consider joining the committees. Most of the committees need volunteers. This is one of the ways that this community does its business. It's one of the ways we keep our costs down, is that we have people volunteer to do some of the work. And almost every single one of these committees you'll see is in desperate need of volunteers. So please think about that. And with that, Mr. Haynes,
Thank
ASC.
you. The ASC has had another busy year. We've worked very hard to bring the ASC to new and higher levels of professionalism and to document the history of its actions so that there can be greater consistency in review decisions going forward. Next, this is the current 2022 membership. The chair position is a non-voting administrative position. You'll notice that all but one of the members' terms end in December. We've been recruiting all year, and I'm recruiting right now. We do have 2 prospective new members. However, a quorum is 3 members. We've already had to reschedule a meeting in order to have a quorum present. We must remember that the ASC is central to much of the activity of the SRA. Without a functioning ASC with a quorum, you can't repaint your house. You can't replace the roof. No remodeling or new construction can begin, and no major landscaping can be done. So we need more members on this committee. So please consider applying to Carol Ballard. It's a simple application procedure, and we're looking forward to having a robust committee for 2023. I need to thank all the people who have worked so hard for the committee this year. Carol Ballard, the ASC administrator, working the hardest. She is the complaint department. She receives all of your concerns. And she also hears the good things, and it is extremely helpful in working through the necessary procedures to get approval for things that require approval. John Gordon is the construction compliance consultant. He reviews all new construction and major remodeling projects for technical accuracy. Karen Zaslow and Todd Lipinski served on the committee, but their terms completed during the year. They worked very hard. We're very, very thankful for their help. And cheers to the new landscaping subcommittee. We have 5 members of the community who are experienced gardeners, and they have put a tremendous amount of work in to help the ASC. They review all landscaping requests that come to the committee and advise the committee on what actions to take. And they've been working hard with Dan and the maintenance committee as well. And so they're doing yeoman's work and saving the community quite a bit in terms of the professional experience that they bring. The ASC has reasonably straightforward purpose and goals. I think we can all support them. It turns out to be complicated to accomplish those goals in a consistent and equitable fashion. There's a great deal, we put a lot of new explanatory information on the website, on the ASC portion of the website. And if you've got questions about what the ASC actually does and how it works, we've put answers there. That's a good place to start and get information. And finally, statistics for the year. These represent about 50% of the workload of the ASC. These are formal requests for approval to do things. You see the numbers submitted, approved, denied, and deferred. First time approval, the chance that your request will be approved on the first review is 76%. That's up 6% from last year. And the most common reason for denial or deferment is that the application was not complete. We didn't have enough information to make a decision. So we're trying really hard to make this a clear, straightforward, and reasonably expeditious process. This committee meets more than any other committee in the organization in order to provide as rapid turnaround as we can expect from a group of volunteer members. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Now we're going to turn to the Communications Committee. John Wong, are you online and can we hear you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear, John.
All right.
From Colorado.
I am speaking to you from a planned vacation I had before I joined the board. I'm talking to you from Vail, Colorado. Thank you for the time. First of all, I'd like to thank our committee members who re-upped with me when I joined the board back in the end of June. I've had 1 quarter of work with this great group of people, and I also want to recognize and thank Robert Elphick, who decided to retire from our committee. I'd like to circle back to something that Doug said in his opening remarks. We, as a committee, we've been concerned about brand equity. I'm a relatively new homeowner in Semiahmoo, and as Jeff and I were considering places to retire to, we looked at Suncadia, we looked at other resorts in the Western Rockies, and we ultimately decided after 20 years of living in Seattle to move to the grace and beauty of Semiahmoo for all the natural beauty and all of the amenities that surround our entire community. But as we were going through our selection process or decision process, one of the things that struck me as very odd was the quality of the materials from the SRA from a design standpoint did not seem to be commensurate with the golf club and the resort. So I spoke to Doug about maybe I can contribute some expertise and resources to the community by help redesigning our website and bring it up to a standard that at least matches or is commensurate with the resort and the golf properties and support the community that way. And so one of the discussions we've had is raising the standards of our communications to better match the resort and the golf club. We've begun to do with that process by completely redesigning the Sra Agm newsletter and updating the look and feel of the SRA. One of our major members in the SRA community is the Resort and Golf Club, and so we've committed to promoting as many of their events, promoting the resort as we possibly can in all of our community communications. And we hope that by raising awareness of what's going on within the golf club and the resort, that our community members will continue to support the resort properties, because a rising tide floats all boats. We also completed an initial website redesign scope for the 2023 budget inclusion, and we think we can redesign a first-class website with minimal cost. And then we've raised our editorial standards. We're beginning to edit a lot of the contributions and seeking contributions from both the community as well as our internal SRA committees. So our goal for next year, next slide here, is to work on developing SRA brand guide and brand standards commensurate with the SRA status as a premier community in the Pacific Northwest. And we want to redesign and launch a new SRA website that will be, A, meets our new brand standard, B, it's modern and it's responsive, or it fits any screen, and most importantly, it's easy for our staff to continually update. As you know, we collect a lot of documents on the website. It's a little kludgy today to find things on the website. We want to make it much easier for our community members to navigate. We're also exploring a public forum option so that our community members can converse with each other, discuss important issues that affect the community, express opinions, but keep it private within the community itself. And then again, we're one of the major vehicles for the board to communicate with the community. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. Next up, Jeff Ferry is going to talk about the Environmental Committee.
Okay, good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing out there? Okay, good. A lot of information. Just a couple things about the committees themselves. First, some people don't want to get involved because of the time commitment. Committees usually meet about once a quarter, plus or minus, with the exception of the ASC, which does meet more often. So keep that in mind if you're interested, because it's something, we're looking for the help, the assistance, the perspectives that all of you have and experience you have. The other thing is important to keep in mind is that committees are advisory bodies. They don't really have any decision-making authority, but they are there to provide that technical knowledge and perspective to the board. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. So I'm the chair of the Environmental Committee. You see the members. We, like the other committees, we need members. So if you're interested in, have a passion in environment, we would encourage you to volunteer. You see the members. We've been active this year. Everyone seems to have a passion on the committee for something. So go to the next slide. So we followed some of those through. We sent out information about the wildfire prevention. You saw that when we had the dry spell this summer. We were tracking the avian flu. You remember about the bird feeders and when you should have them out and when you should not have them out. We held a litter pickup day. Unfortunately, only a few people came, so we're going to try and repeat that again so we can keep our community looking sharp. You saw the glyphosate document that we sent out about banning that potentially in our community because of the health risks associated with the glyphosate products. We contributed to the board paper about development in our community. So we know there's a lot of development that's being planned up and around Semiahmoo. And we also put up a plastic bag recycling bin in the SRA office. Maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. It's a way for us to help protect our environment. In terms of our plans for next year, we want to, actually, we're in the process of writing up a resolution for glyphosate ban throughout our community. And we'll present that to the board for them to consider at the November board. There are alternatives to glyphosates there are alternatives that we can use to still, manage our landscape. So we'll be providing that as well to the community. We want to pursue what was started this year, maybe looking into banning gas-powered blowers and yard equipment that we know is very noisy and also emits a lot of smoke. So looking into these things, continue to monitor the developments in Semiahmoo, around Semiahmoo, do another litter pickup day, as I had said. There is a proposal to at least look at memorial benches, maybe as something we could look into throughout the community, and of course, recruit more members. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, quick question. Can you hear me?
Okay, Jim, you're next up.
You're next up.
Hello? Hello?
Back again.
Back again.
So as treasurer, I chair the finance committee. I'd like to call out and acknowledge the committee members, April Hashimoto, Karen Swanson, and Tom Lampe. Of course, David works carefully with us as well. And for the first half of the year, Joe Sothi was in my position and was chair of this committee. So I'd like to acknowledge his help during the year as well. So I can really only speak to the second half of the year. We haven't had as many meetings as we probably should and will in the future, but I can say that we have been relatively busy. I know with David coming on board and then with me coming on board as the new treasurer, the finance committee has been quite helpful in orienting us, helping us get questions answered about certain accounting aspects of the way in which we do our business and keep our records. And then the big thing that happened recently is the finance committee was actively involved in vetting the budget. We have a relatively small committee, and so I'd like to make an appeal that we're actively trying to expand our committee. We're looking for people with CPA or finance or accounting backgrounds who really understand accounting standards, et cetera, and can help us make these determinations. So if you're interested and you have that kind of a background or a healthy financial background, please get a hold of me. We'd love to add a few new members to the committee. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Back to Jeff, Governance Committee.
Okay, so one of the things that I do as vice president is I'm the chair of the governance committee. You see that we also need members. So if you're interested in volunteering for governance, I think we all agree that it's probably one of the more critical committees in our SRA. So really what we did is, I'd say there's sort of two buckets. One is to try and start working a little more across the SRA in terms of reaching the NHOAs in the neighborhoods. Early in the year, we had a lot of work with the developer in Carnoustie, and there's still a lot of work there as we look forward. We did start to tackle some of the amendment issues, one of which was on the ballot this time about the enforcement and 1202. We also started looking in 501, this maintenance one, which has been postponed for further discussion. But as Doug said earlier, there's a lot of work that can be done in terms of our CCNRs. So that's just, the tip of the iceberg. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard. We've updated our committee charter, which still needs to be updated, and it's an annual process. So once the new board is in place and the new vice president, they can take a look at updating that charter further. And we did start liaising with NHOAs. I was helpful in getting SAG 1 and 2 NHOA formalized. And so that's good because it comprises a big number of homes in the community. And Steve Haynes organized a meeting early in the year with the ASC and some of the NHOA presidents. So I think that needs to be further pursued in 2023. Looking ahead to 2023, as I said, we'll continue working on this 501 amendment. We'll see what the new board wants to do with that and how we want to take it further. We will, of course, continue the process of looking at our governing documents across, all of the governing documents. The fine schedule needs to be reviewed if and when we have our I don't know what we call it these days, compliance person or community person that's going to help with the enforcement of our covenants. So I think that just needs to be looked at and make sure that we have things correct and recruit new members. So if you're interested in governance, it is important. Please contact the SRA and we would love to have you as a member. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, maintenance committee, lots to go over here. Steve Geisels is the chair, and he is, I believe, in the desert of California. And Steve, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, beautiful. Like you were sitting in the room yourself. So,
Oh, awesome. Well,
okay, please go ahead.
okay. Thanks, David. 4 months ago, when I assumed the maintenance chairperson role, I met with David and Dan, right? Because you said, okay, what is it? And the purpose of the meeting was, what are we going to focus on? And really, all of us sort of came to the conclusion that we need to go back to the 2021 AGM and look at it and say, okay, what is it that we said 2022 was going to be about? What did we say in 2021? This time last year, and it was entrance signs, gates, and bioswales. So let's keep that as our focus. Oh, and by the way, if you have additional time, let's do everything else. So 3 things I'm going to mention before I'm going to ask Dan Rudolph to spend some time walking through some of the details is first, I asked Dan about 3 weeks ago. I said, hey, Dan, send me a list as I'm thinking about preparing for the AGM. Send me a list of some of the projects and activities you and the team have worked on. I don't need the day-to-day, routine stuff, or I just need kind of project and activities that you worked on. 1 day later, a 10-page single-spaced document containing over 50 activities/projects arrived in my inbox. And also he wrecked my printer. So Dan, we'll have to talk about that. And again, these were not the routine things. So holy cow, our maintenance team has been involved in a lot of projects. And to Doug's point earlier, some of the activity and projects you actually see, in the community. But so much of what they've done, and when I was reading this, a lot of what they've done is not visible. It's things behind the scenes like bioswales and stormwater systems. So that's first. The second is, and Doug did a really good job of amplifying this, and that is we now have a really skilled maintenance team, and they have the ability to work on complex projects and activities. And we haven't always had this level of talent. But because we now have it in-house, it allows us to get going on things immediately. Think about if we don't have those skills, we have to go out and find it, and find, all of us know, right? Just think about day to day what you have to do for your own property. Trying to find talent is not easy today. So we save a lot of time because we have that talent in-house. And it also, and Doug amplified this as well, it saves us a lot of money that otherwise would be spent on expensive outsourcing. So the third thing I want to mention, earlier this year, before my involvement with the maintenance committee, they worked closely with David and Dan to develop a very much needed, comprehensive and accurate reserve study. And our community owes Dave Whitmore a huge thank you for all of his work on this important study. Now, with this report now in hand, it provides a realistic assessment of our situation, and it allows us to calculate accurate budget forecasts. So what needs to be repaired and or replaced? When does it need to be repaired or replaced? And how much is it going to cost to repair or replace that? So with that, let me turn the conversation over to Dan Rudolph, our Director of Maintenance, to walk through a more detailed conversation of what's happened so far in 2022. Dan?
Hey, Steve, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it again. I'm Dan Rudolph. I live in Prestwick Village and have been here for 3 years now. I was asked to take a look at this job at the end of 2020 and or the 2021. Coming into it in 2022, I was doing two things. I could see I was going to need to do two things. First is carry over priorities from the previous year, as well as assess key assets to find out where we needed to put resources right now. We had a little bit of a late start in the year due to the weather, and a lot of stuff that we wanted to get done earlier, we didn't. But one thing I did discover immediately was that there was a lot of unidentified issues, specifically relating to gates. Has a good one right there. The first 3 months I was here, gate response was almost a daily basis. And this is on top of stormwater response as well. So it was a busy first couple of months of the year. I'm not going to read over this. I'm not going to repeat what's already put there. There's a couple of things that I want to look at, though, as we compare what the priorities were in 2021 to what we accomplished on those priorities in 2022. And so for the entrance signs, we have 5 new. You haven't seen those go in yet. I hope to have 2. I would like to commit to more installed by the end of the year. We fixed lights, refurbished existing signs, and also replaced some posts for existing signs. On the gates, the one thing that really isn't outlined there, I discovered when I came in that many of the safety features, in fact, about 80% of the safety features on the gates were inoperable. As I went through the systems, I found out that it was really a hodgepodge of parts. There was really it wasn't a consistent mechanical assembly. So we had gateway controls come in and do a review of every gate in the community, and a lot of problems were identified. We then took that list and we split it in half. We said, we're going to do what we can in-house, and you're going to do what we can't do in-house. And then we did that. We tackled that. Now, as far as the bioswale goes, to give you a quick update on that, we were late getting into that bioswale. I really wanted to get in there before the dry season, get that thing done. We were lucky that the rains delayed. We did get it done, but of course now here comes the rains, and the grass that's in the bioswale, the plantings that are there have only just started to grow. I'm confident in the work in the bioswale. I feel that the bioswale is repaired. We identified some problems that we weren't aware of from the July 2021 assessment. There were some leaks in the second and third sections that had washed out portions of the bioswale, as well as the adjacent access road. All of that has since been repaired. There are 4 sections at the end of the bioswale that still need seeding. And I don't think it's advisable that I try to do that this winter. I want to do a proper job of that in the spring. Strip out the old plantings, check what the status is of the subsoils or the topsoil that may need to be replaced. But I think I can condition it and then put in the new seeds. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide. This is really a continuation of maintenance accomplishments from 2022. In the common areas, you can see from yourself, we got a lot done there as well. One thing to point out there is the Boundary Ridge Beach Access Stairway. That will need assessment this coming spring. Most of the components on that stairway are old, and many of them need replacement. So we need to look at that on the reserve study. I'll repeat the thanks to Dave Whitmore. I'm not a very organized person. He was able to take my random thoughts and suggestions and make something out of them. But I do feel very confident in the numbers. We had one of the big things for me was roads. So we had WRS come in and review all the roads. I drove around with him. And then we picked out the hot items. And then I said, if this was your community, what would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And that's the way we handled it. And I got some estimates on that as well. Of course, those estimates now would be outdated significantly due to inflation. So we got some road repairs done, Bald Eagle Drive, Centerling Way, Wood Duck Road, Goshawk Corner, and at Canvasback. There's many more that needs to be done. There's a lot of areas of roads in this Semiahmoo that need attention. Go on to the next slide. Okay, so here, you'd have to deal with what I deal with every day to understand how grateful I am to these people. At the beginning of the year, I'm not a landscape specialist. I hardly know a tree from a blade of grass. But fortunately, there are some people in the community. All of these ladies stepped forward willingly. We didn't have to drag them in. They came in gladly to help. These ladies have been here for a long time. They're all master gardeners. They know what they're doing. And they really have, they took it from me. My main priorities there, when I met with the ladies, I said, look, the landscaping needs to be compatible with the existing Semiahmoo aesthetic. It needs to provide seasonal color. It needs to be low maintenance and drought resistant. And I think they've satisfied that. Now, this is a multi-year approach. It's going to take time for things to fill in. And it's also the kind of approach that allows for some variation. So we're at these beginning stages of the landscaping. But I can't thank these ladies enough. I've got them booked for 90 hours on site. This doesn't include drawings. It doesn't include phone calls. It doesn't include meetings with NHOAs. It doesn't include all the things that I'm not even aware of. Because a lot of times, and this is, I would call them on the day before, the next day, ask for something because I needed it. Most of the time they would do it. So they put up with me as well. A lot of time and trouble has gone into this. It's just, it makes my job so much easier to have these ladies here. I can't thank them enough for what they've done. They've just been a pleasure to work with. Thank you. All right, looking ahead for the future. So really, we're just going to carry forward with what we've already done. We have skills right now in the maintenance department that allow us to do things in-house that will save the community money. Now, obviously, there's budget constraints that made doing as much as possible in-house for certain key assets necessary while we have these people. Leroy is definitely, he can do just about anything. And I can't thank Leroy enough for his advice and suggestion in all areas, stormwater, gates, anything mechanical, fixing the sweeper, keeping things running, advice on a daily basis. It's just been invaluable. But I wanted to this year to get as much done with my skills, Leroy's, Mike's, who handled the common areas, as possible. And that's what we focused on. So looking ahead, we really need to look at the new gate operators at the gated entries. I've got us 370 hours of gate maintenance this year, man hours and gate maintenance. I would say probably, and I'm guessing 40% of that time is repairs and the rest of it is routine maintenance. So many of the operators you're really putting good money after bad. So it's time to look into getting some new gate operators in place. Stormwater, you're aware of the systems at the bioswales. There are 87 stormwater catchments that are 3/4 of the full or full in the remainder of the community, not including Boundary Ridge, which was recently cleaned. We need to complete the landscaping, which we'll do. I've seen the drawings. They're absolutely beautiful. Those have been completed for next year. We need to evaluate the Boundary Ridge Beach Access Stairway. That's a key point, and then update the maintenance plan. This is something I hope to try to at least have a draft ready by the beginning of December. And I can answer more questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Mike, Harkle Road. He's going to come up and talk about safety and security. And they've been a busy committee this year. One of the committees that doesn't seem to need a whole lot of volunteers. Mike, you're lucky. Very good. very good.
fully staffed for now, so that's great. So I'm Mike Harkleroad. I'm retired from being a deputy sheriff down in California. I'm not a native of California. I actually grew up here in Washington. So last November's rain, after living in California for almost 30 years, was quite a shock to my system, even though I grew up here in Washington. But anyway, so retired deputy sheriff. And I'm glad to have left that profession behind, but proud of it. So as you can see, we have a full committee. And actually what I forgot to put up here is our next safety committee meeting is next Wednesday at 1 o'clock at the SRA building or via Zoom. And we have a long list of agenda items. So if you're interested, I encourage you to show up or be present on Zoom for that. Two things that our charter talks about is the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT. And the other thing is Neighborhood Watch, which we'll get to in a second. So the CERT program just completed a training session here in earlier this month where I think it was 16 members. Yeah. 16 community folks went through the training, including my wife, to be certified by the Sheriff's Department here to help out in the event of emergencies in our local community. So if you're kind of unsure of whether you want to be on a committee, but you still want to volunteer, here's a great opportunity here. Our next training session, I believe, is going to be early in 2023. So a chance for you to get some great training on how to help out your local community here in the event of natural disasters or emergencies. So it's a great program. Nominal charge for you to participate, but you get a nice little backpack full of goodies. I think you even get a hard hat too. Is that right? Yeah, so you can walk around with a little hard hat, and you can buy all sorts of whiz bang accessories for yourself and all that good stuff. So next slide, David. The Neighborhood Block Watch program. I'm sure all of you have heard of that kind of program over the years wherever you've lived. We've had a little trouble getting traction here in Semiahmoo. I'm not quite sure what the issues are behind that. I think I know, but I'm not positive. You know, kind of the nature of the community here. A lot of folks that kind of spend half a year here, half a year somewhere else, weekends, all that kind of stuff. So all kind of factors into it too. Plus, I think folks are still kind of getting back to normal from the COVID events here for the last couple of years. So this is a great program when you get it up and running. We had a few neighborhoods that have it up and running, but we need to get more folks. So here's another chance to volunteer. If you don't want to be on a committee, you can participate in the Neighborhood Watch program. You know, we live in a very secure, well, not secure, that's not the right word, very safe community here. So this will help ensure that it remains that way. And just a plug for the Blaine Police Department. They are very responsive to us out here. We don't see a lot of patrols out here during the course of a day, mainly because it's pretty quiet. We want to keep it that way. But if you see something that seems out of the ordinary, where you think, I wonder if I should call the police, then you've already answered the question. You should. Okay. Blaine PD is always looking for things to do. Okay. You know, most of their activity is downtown, all that kind of stuff, but occasionally things happen over here. So, you know, they keep stats and they respond to where the stats tell them to go to. So if we report things over here, they'll go, things are happening over in Semiahmoo. Hopefully not bad things, but so if you want to see more police presence, then we have to let them know that we're over here, right? So, and I think that is it. Actually, you know what, I want to say one more thing here regarding the CERT program. A lot of the credit for getting up and going goes to my fellow board member here, Jane Moore, for getting that organized up and running. And that is it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Now, you may have noticed we were going in alphabetical order, but we're going to break with that tradition. We have the election committee due to report, and Tippy Vaughn is going to do that as the chair.
Welcome, everybody. 64%.
That's
Yeah,
How's that?
that's better. 64% of you voted. That is phenomenal. You heard David talk about the last place he was, it was like 20%. Last year we were, 52, maybe 53%. So we have a pretty robust election here. And this one, you have to agree, was very spirited. We had a lot of talk, a lot of ideas, a lot of things came out of this particular election for the committee itself. So anyway, for us, it was a learning experience. We hadn't expected so many people to apply. And so for us, it was good. It really was. So what I want to do right now is talk to you a little bit. I want to introduce our committee members. I also want to talk a little bit about what we accomplished this year, and finally, results. So our members, I am the chairman. Pam Rosso is my unacknowledged co-chair, a wonderful person, worked with her, known her for 40 some odd years. So it was good to have her as my sidekick. We have Suzanne Dugan and Valerie Norris just recently joined, which is great. You saw that she's on a couple other committees, active lady. Pilar Whitmore, and finally, we had a retired person, actually, he rolled off, Rob Lee. He rolled off in September, and Valerie just joined us this month. So moving on, accomplishments. So what I want to do is kind of take you through the year as we saw it. The election committee, obviously, elections committee is a cyclical event. Sometimes we've got interim elections. Sometimes we don't. This year we did have one, but I want to start with one of the things that came out of the committee was our talent survey. So we as a committee took a look at the community as a whole and saw that there was some apathy. We also saw we really didn't understand or know who our residents were, didn't understand the experience, the depth and breadth of the talent within our own community, and we felt like we should be tapping into that a little bit more. So Pilar Whitmore came up with the idea of a talent survey, a very simple 4 questions, contact information, experience, interests, those kinds of things. And we sent out an email to the residents, didn't get too much activity, sent out another one, got a little bit more, and we were able to match up committee with members that were interested in certain committees. So there was some things that were good, did come out of it. It's still available. It is on the website. I'm not real sure where the link has gone. It was on the first page. So I encourage you all to go take that survey. There's spots for just project work. Some people don't want to get into committees where there's meetings, and they would rather do something with a beginning and an end, project type work. So that's certainly something we would like you all to think about doing. Moving on to special election. It was already mentioned that we had 2 new board members, Jim Fitzsimmons and John Wong, join, and that's a whole event. There's quite a bit that goes into that. We accomplished that in June, and then we started turning our attention to the election. And so part of what our core goal was this year is try to move us all to electronic voting. And last year, Helen Worley told you about the fact that 220 ballots, packets went out to the people who had not given us email consent for electronic voting. Those are expensive, especially when you look at the fact that of those 220, only 33 came back to us, which made the effective cost $33 a packet. So our goal was to go to 0 as far as mailing, and we accomplished that. But what we did was we took that core group of people, and a lot of them had email addresses on file with us. There were very few that had no email address. I want to say 8 to 10 people, not very many. And we concentrated mostly on the people with the email addresses, sent out emails to them, asking them to provide us with consent. And we sent out flyers, emails, and we were able to whittle that down to 137 people. So it's better. We didn't, as I said, we did not mail anybody a packet. Your options were to come into the SRA and pick up something that was printed on site, or go to the website and download. So will continue to be available to all of you if you don't like to vote electronically. Though we want to push everybody to that. It's more accurate, it's less time consuming, et cetera, et cetera. However, I will tell you, as a result of this, we only had 20 paper ballots. So it was pretty effective. Let's see. All right, one of the big things we did this year was looking at how we can put our candidates running for office out there for the membership to get to know them a little bit better. Well, we started out in August asking for people to come forward to run for the board, and it was a terrible failure. We had 2 people for 4 open positions. And so we sent out some more emails up on the website, anything we could do, signs posted at the gates, crickets. So one of our core things is to get candidates. And so I was panicking. So went to David, and David said, well, I've had success in the past with a particularly worded email. Let me send it out and let's see what we get. Unbelievable. We had at one time 11 candidates for the board. Think about that, 11. It whittled down, as you well know, to 8. So we're looking at 8 people. We're moving rapidly toward a deadlines, hard stops. We had 3 town halls with budgets. We thought about town halls for the candidates. Couldn't really, we felt like the town halls weren't that well attended, that it wouldn't reach as many people as we wanted to. And that's why we went to the videos. I don't know if any of you looked at them, but each candidate came in and did a 5-minute presentation talking a bit about himself or herself. And we posted those on the SRA YouTube site so that residents could look at them anytime, any place that they wanted. It was a bit of a trial and error. We wanted it to be a little more robust, but the circumstances, lessons learned, next year, I feel like it will be much more robust and hopefully give everybody the things that maybe the contacts or the questions answered that you might want of your candidates. So that brings us finally to where we are now. The election, the whole process of electing board of directors, the entire process culminating today. And that means results. So I'd like to move to results. Hey, so as you heard before, the budget, or you might have suspected, I don't know if anybody actually said, but the budget did pass. And one of the things about the budget that the reason it passed, even though it didn't have as many votes for as it had fewer for rejection, is of the state law that in order to reject the budget, it has to be 50% of all eligible voters plus one. So it passed. It was ratified. Okay, now let's talk about our new board members. Buzz Abercrombie, Paul Atchison, Greg Booth, and April. The only person I see in the room is April. Paul, where's Paul? Oh, there you are. I didn't see you. Hi. And Paul in the back. I don't see Buzz or Greg. So anyway, congratulations. Let's move on to the resolutions. So the resolution regarding enforcement did not pass. That amendment failed. And you can see the total votes cast, those to approve and those to reject. And then the next resolution is a member resolution for independence of directors, and that one passed handily. And I'm assuming you know the difference between member resolutions and board resolutions. It's just where they originate. So member resolutions come from you folks. And of course, the others come from the board. So that concludes what I came here to tell you. Other than I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank the people that ran for office. I want to thank the wonderful staff. You guys are amazing. The board of directors, you guys were so supportive. I really appreciate it, especially you, Jeff, over the year, been great. So on that, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tippy, for that and reporting and all the hard work the election committee did. I have to say, the volume of work that committee did behind the scenes, you'd be very surprised at. And there was a lot of debates, a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of hard work put into it. As I mentioned to them, I can't imagine if it was just up to staff, if we had to run the election and do all the things that they did on top of just kind of keeping the wheels on the bus on a day-to-day basis at SRA. So thank you very much for all the work that your committee did. The next part of the meeting here, and it's really sort of the last part, is the member open forum. And so this is where members get to stand up and ask questions, make comments, provide criticism or even gratitude, whatever strikes your fancy. But we do have some, I guess, rules of engagement around this, just to try to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. We have about 100 people on Zoom. We have probably, I don't know, maybe 30 people in the room here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to alternate between folks in the room, people that are in person, and people that are lining up to speak on Zoom. So what we'll ask you to do is please state your name and, you know, what neighborhood you're from, what community, so we know, and please state it clearly so Lori knows and can mark that down. This is all for the minutes and taking good notes on the meeting itself. As again, to try to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. It's 3 minutes, and Mike Harkleroad has a little timer there. He's going to be our timekeeper. And so the 3 minutes is going to be for your question, comments, and then the associated answer if it has an answer. So just keep that in mind. If you have comments or that time is going to exceed 3 minutes, you can ask another member to yield their time. But you can only do that once. And so the total you could have is 6 minutes for question and answer. And we just ask too that, you know, this is a community meeting. We would like to be able to keep it very civil. Please, no personal attack. We want to talk about ideas and you know, and have a debate, and spirited debates are fine, but please, let's try to keep it as civil, as I said, and I hope that we can do that. So will we start online? Sure, I'll turn the podium on. 1 second. Just doesn't work. Okay, here we go. Do you want to start with someone online?
Yeah, can I speak? It's Jonathan Huggett.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, I first of all, I do want to thank Doug for the work that he put in, because I've worked closely with him, and he's a great guy, and it's a very, very difficult job. But so let me just state, I think people need to understand this Boundary Ridge issue is a very complex issue, and I hope the new board members will revisit it. And let me explain. I have great sympathy if you are in Boundary Ridge and you're inflicted with flooding. And if I lived there, I'd want to do something about it. The problem is this has nothing to do with the SRA. I understand Doug's motivation to get in. What happened was, when the developer of Sea Smoke was required to produce a stormwater management plan, he hired Cascade Engineering, very good company. They flagged in that report that the storm sewer system in Boundary Ridge was not adequate. For whatever reason, the developer chose to ignore it, the city of Blaine chose to ignore it, and the SRA was never told. And the result is there is flooding in Boundary Ridge. There is no way that the SRA is responsible for that. I don't know whether the lawyer that said we are is being improperly briefed, but I really encourage the new board to go into this, because this sets a precedent. Okay, it's flooding in Boundary Ridge. What about slips on Drayton Hillsides, where people inadvisably built where they shouldn't have done? At what point do we stop being the nanny organization that picks up everybody's problems, which we weren't responsible for? So I finished my time, and I just want people to know that. And I want to thank Doug for putting in the effort.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Doug expresses his gratitude as well. Online, who do we have? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Thanks.
Mr. Kamyati, is that right?
Kamyati,
That's
yeah,
Gabe
thank you.
Kamyati.
Thanks for this. And,
What neighborhood are you from, Gabe?
yes, my name is Gabe Komyati, and I'm from St. Andrews. I'm not sure which one it is. You've got 4 different letters beside that, so I haven't figured that out. But here's my question: is a couple of things. What is the advantage of a community HOA to be associated with businesses like the golf course and the resort? How do you reconcile the goals of the golf course and the resort, whose interest is to expand business, have more people in this area, with the aspect of having a quiet community?
Doug, do you want to take that one?
SRA. SRA is an association that includes a marina, the hotel, the golf club, and 27 associations, not too dissimilar from a lot of resort communities around the country. The SRA has a set of rules and regulations that are overreaching across everything. To answer your question, what is the value of having our resort and our golf club and the marina incorporated in that? And it's the original vision of what SRA is. It's a resort community, and we all gain value from that, from the standpoint that as the hotel prospers, as the golf club is better, as the marina is active and full, we all benefit from that. That's the intent of what the resort community is for. They all benefit from us as well, because we bring business to them. We all are, some of us have boats, a lot of us golf. We all have family that come and stay at the hotel. So it's a symbiotic relationship. The brand equity that develops out of that is really beneficial to all of us. It's beneficial to the hotel, it's beneficial to the residential pieces, and it's beneficial to us personally. So when you say, what is the benefit of just having those entities, these business entities in our association? Well, I think that there's a lot of benefit there. I mean, it's the kind of community we are. And that's what makes us different from living in maybe Horizon or living over in some subdivision out in East Bellingham. That's what it is. Oh.
Like when you don't have a resort property that is vibrant.
Yeah, I recently played golf over at Homestead in August. And I was shocked at the condition that golf course is on. It's a public course. It's not a private club, but the homeowners association around it is suing the golf course because of the condition that it's in. I mean, you can't, I've never played a golf course that was that bad. So here we have the ability to kind of keep our assets kind of close and support them. And I think it just makes for a great community. So hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Anybody online? Paul,
Paul,
Yeah, this is
yeah,
Paul
this is
Aguirre,
Paul Aguirre,
and I'm the
and I'm the president of the
Marin Homeowners Association. I just have a quick question. The folks down here on the spit feel a little left out of the organization, and kind of an afterthought. And you talked about inclusion, and you talked about equity. I'd like to know the specific programs that the resort association is proposing to include the spit communities in the expenditures of our dues. And will you be reaching out to the different organizations so that we can have our input as far as that new committee?
Me? Okay. And was it Paul?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes,
It's
Paul. Okay, Paul, could you repeat what community were you from? It just kind of cut out.
Okay, yeah, I'm in the Marin, and I'm the
Okay.
president of the Homeowners Association here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. Well, I'll answer that question for you since the mic's in my hand. The board at the last board meeting put a resolution together to form a task force. Jane Moore, who's from Semiahmoo Shores, is chairing that. There are other committee members, mostly from the board, that will be designing a committee charter. And this is going to be an ad hoc committee, which will have a definite specific goal of putting together, I guess, recommendations for the board and the community no later than June of this year. I believe that's what we're shooting for. So a task force is formed. Their deliverables are by December 21st of this year to try to put together a charter of this ad hoc committee. So you could say, well, what does this charter look like? Well, we have to try to determine how are we going to populate that ad hoc committee. We would hope that we'd have someone like yourself, Paul, your head of your NHOA down at Marin, people from Semiahmoo Shores, people from up on the hill. How many people on this committee? How often will it meet? Those sort of things that the task force is going to try to put this together, give it to the board by December. So then hopefully the first meeting of this ad hoc committee will likely be January. Probably not much later than that, or maybe February, but there will be a lot of work for that committee to do in order to come back to the board and be able to make recommendations about these issues. I would assume that the resort would be there because they are also one of those, they're our largest member. They equal about the equivalent of 51 single family homes. So they will be included in the discussion as well. So that's what we're working on. We want to try to make sure that we have a good process, that process is put together in a way that the community sees was done thoughtfully, that it's inclusive, that it's transparent, and then it has some timelines, and that we can hold the board, manager, everybody that's tried to put this together accountable.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I would like to be included. So if whoever's in charge of that could reach out. And I think the folks from the other associations as well would like to have some type of representation on that committee as well.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody in the audience? Who do we have? Would you like to come up to the mic?
Hello, my name is Tim Conley, and I'm in Glen Eagle. And my question addresses the slide that occurred on Boundary Ridge. I'm not sure how many people have had a chance to visit it, but it was very significant. The question is, the rock was brought in by some kind of entity to try to mitigate the slide, which is quite significant. And I'm wondering if in doing that, did they not take responsibility for that particular aspect of that hillside that's starting to, it appears, give way? As a resident of Astoria for 17 years, I can tell you that slides were a major portion of what happens in Astoria. And I'm not sure what that hillside is about right now, but the amount of rock that went in there was extremely significant. And it's certainly something looking forward. What are the responsibilities of the SRA? What are the responsibilities of the city, the county, and how is that all going to go together as you see it right now? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you were probably referring to the Drayton Harbor recreational easement where the rock was at, and not Boundary Ridge. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. Should I take that one? Okay. The Drayton Harbor recreational easement is another complex issue. That rock that was placed down there was by the owners of lot 17 and 18, I believe. And so they went through an exhaustive process with the city. Doing anything within 200 feet of the shoreline is very involved, let's say, just permit wise. You're in a shoreline sensitive area, and there are just a number of agencies that get their fingers in the pie on that one. So he spent many, probably 2 years or so, getting the engineering done, providing it to all of the concerned agencies, including Fish and Wildlife and the City of Blaine and Department of Ecology, all of those. So that was a private individual that did that work. What SRA has is, and this was in the original master plan, was a 20-foot easement, recreational easement, that straddles the center of the old Drayton Harbor Road. Now, the City of Blaine abandoned that road many years ago. And if you remember when I was speaking about Leroy Dougal, our one of our maintenance men, Leroy used to plow that road and just push dirt and trees off, and the city abandoned it because they knew that they could not maintain it. And so it was a recreational path. All of that is across private property. All the problems that are the slides up on top, that's only part of it. The other part is that the shoreline is eroding. If you walk down that road, you'll notice places where it's actually concave. Pavement is starting to drop into the bay. From my personal experience, $1,500 a linear foot to replace some of that, or to stabilize that shoreline. It is a huge investment if we choose to do so. And that's something that we're going to have to look at. It's very complex. So my time's up. Sorry. I'd be more than happy to answer more of that question afterwards too. Okay. Kurt Hagman online. Kurt, please go ahead and tell us where you're from.
Yeah, I'm live on Gossack Road in St. Andrews Green 2. My question is also, it's maybe more of a comment. It's about the new ad hoc committee that's being proposed regarding SRA equity. My feeling is I haven't seen the charter for that committee or whatever, but it sounds too narrow because this equity issue is linked inextricably with the conflict between the CCNRs, between the Neighborhood Homeowners Association and the SRA. And until we can sort out the conflicts between the CCNRs, I don't see that we can tackle the thing about equity between neighborhoods. That's all.
Thank you for your comment on that one, Kurt. I think I heard you volunteering for this committee with those comments.
I'm not sure I have the time. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so in person.
What exactly is a bios well? And the question for Jeff is, we have $1 million. Can you give me some color on what the money is invested in?
Well, that was probably Jim.
Seeing as banks pay you 0.08% and treasuries give you 4.5%, so I don't know what the money's in. And I really don't know what a biosphere is. So just give me some color on what's being done.
Okay.
Where.
I can answer what the bioswale is. And many developments, it's a manner in which to treat runoff from developments, especially impervious surfaces. What it's meant to do is treat the water before it reaches an outfall like Drayton Harbor. You know, we have oysters out there, you know, an industry that has developed around that. And so especially during low flow, say the first time it rains, you see oil sheen on pavement, brake dust, all that sort of thing. When that flow goes into a bioswale, it is biologically removes those contaminants before they reach Puget Sound. So that's one of the main purposes, is to treat and filter water in a unnatural condition so that it is more in a natural condition when it reaches the sound. So what you have down there is many sort of cascading layers of impermeable surfaces with plantings that slow down, trap, filter, and treat that water before it reaches Drayton Harbor. And as far as our investments are concerned, we have with CIT, Community Institute, I can't remember what the acronym is, but those are put into CDs, certificates of deposit, that are automatically deposited in different banks. So you're probably familiar with FDIC insurance limits. You have $250,000. If you have a more, you know, if you have $1 million, what happens is that money is then spread out through different banking institutions in a single account, so you don't have to go shopping for CDs. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that question. And online, David Eulis, can you tell us where you're from, David?
I'm from SAG 1 and 2. My comment is about the Equity Committee. I think it's important enough topic that it should be something more than an ad hoc committee. If it's going to actually do real work and be surfacing the options to the community, it needs to be seen as something that's an official exercise. I also would like to be sure that the terms of reference of that committee are open-ended, which is to say that the options should range from no change, i.e. When you bought your house, you knew what the CCNRs were for your Neighborhood Homeowners Association, you knew what the SRA CCNRs were, and you should have known what the variables were. Now that's a major statement. Most people didn't, including me. But legally, that was your obligation. So that the options should go from no change to recognizing that the SRA is a result of a bunch of business deals that were made when the various communities were started up. And there's no actual rationale for there being a single SRA. And that, as I've said before at various meetings, the option of breaking the SRA into more aligned pieces, homeowners associate or condo associations versus single family homes versus communities that have issues on things like hillsides that I'm not particularly interested in becoming accountable or responsible for from a financial point of view. I'm a little worried what I'm hearing so far is predicting a result which is a somehow a simplification for management of the SRA that's not consistent with what the value propositions are for the various homeowners associations and the individual owners. Thank you.
Okay, Dave, I appreciate those comments. One quick thing, ad hoc committees, I know that they sound less important or valuable than a standing committee, but generally with an ad hoc committee, it really has a single purpose and it has a sunset. It can do just as important work as a standing committee, but that's why we're suggesting an ad hoc committee. We would like to have deliverables by June, but that is going to be up to the committee and the board. But thank you for your comments.
Let's be clear. This committee is not going to have anything done by June. It's an extremely complex issue that will take years to resolve.
We recognize that, Dave, but the 3 minutes are up. I'm sorry. Do we have somebody in the room that would like to speak? Next up, and just please state your name and where you're from.
I'm Sandy Morgan. I live on Quail Run. Doug, I had never thought of it before, but when you mentioned that we have a symbiotic relationship with the resort, that was certainly one of the reasons we moved here. This is a fabulous community, and I've never been happier in my life living anywhere with it. But when you mentioned that it was a symbiotic relationship, the thing that I wondered is, does the resort contribute financially to the SRA annually with it? Does that show in our budget? Okay, so
6% of our stuff.
oh, okay. I didn't realize that. So
Yes, they do.
I have mentioned, I'm sorry, earlier. Yeah, equivalent of.
appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your answer.
So the equivalent of 51 homes. So they do contribute quite a bit. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, online. Okay, Kurt, you said is there any other people beside Kurt Hagman that want to speak online? Okay. Debbie Pequin.
Hi
Debbie?
there. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Yeah, so the talk about the equity issue, people have talked about it in kind of big general terms. Is there a specific example of something that the communities who are seeking more equity, can you say specifically what they would like to see changed? Give an example, please.
I think what you were saying is other specific examples of what maybe members have about inequities. What sort of activities are or not happening? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, like an example of what they would like to see done for their community to feel like they have more equity or getting whatever they want out of the community. Yeah.
Jane, do you want to take that one? No. Okay, well, I guess I will try to answer that for you. Oh, and Debbie, what neighborhood are you from? People couldn't hear online. Your sound is a little off.
I'm in St. Andrews.
St. Andrews, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So to answer that question, there are, say the resort, for instance, we just mentioned they pay the equivalent of 51 single family homes. They really don't get a lot from our maintenance department. They don't get too much from our admin either. They have their own entity. And so we're looking at ways in which can we try to provide more for the resort for their contributions to our budget annually. Other examples would be what we hear from members a lot is those that are down on the spit that are in newer communities. They're just when they join the SRA, there just weren't a lot of maintenance responsibilities, especially for SRA to perform down for those communities. So it's a matching of assessment and expense that is what people are concerned about. Okay. Okay. We have some. Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the question. And we have somebody that's here in the room that wants to speak.
Hi, Tom Cherry, Melrose Cottages. Hating the blank side map, but in past times, often there's a statement review from the resort updates and things like that. And I wonder if there's anything that offhand you wanted to update the community on.
Wasn't expecting that. Okay, I will go for it. It is, as you all know, it's been a tough couple of years before my time, obviously with the shutdowns and such like that. But the health of the resort for the first time ever since the Wright Hotel Group has owned it, is actually going to turn a bottom line profit. So for us, it's good. It's good. Country Club, we weren't there yet, but we have some explanations for that. Obviously, 3 months without. Oh, Matt Skoletsky, general manager of the resort and the Country Club. Jeff obviously reports up to me. And Country Club, we are going to finish in the red, but that was 3 months without the Canadian dues and ancillary revenues related to that. But projections for next year, we're going to come back from that. So great news for the hotel or for the Wright family, because they keep putting lots of money. This year alone, we'll put $5.5 million in capital investment between the Country Club and here. And we're going through very similar things. Our seawall is failing. I just walked it this morning. I don't even know how much that's going to cost yet, but it's going to be in there for next year as well. But just from myself and from our ownership group, management company, Columbia Hospitality, it is a thank you for sticking with us through all of this. There is still multiple investments coming. We're going to try and paint the building. Anybody guess how much it would be to paint this thing?
About $500,000.
It's good. Double that and add 100,000 and 70. So it's 700 and something $1,000 before we touch any of the, rotting siding, any of that. So yes, did I tell you 1.2? You're good at that. 1.2 is what we're projecting for that. So investment is still coming. We are going to look at the practice facilities. All of the things are happening. And now that we can actually show we can make a buck, we can hopefully get more investment into this and that up there. So thank you all for the support though.
This is the first time since I've been on the board, and probably if we ask the people in the room, the interaction they've had with the resort, it's been great. They've stepped up with Matt and Jeff being new. We were able to put our little leadership council together. We've talked about ways where we can find joint places to share resources, how we can share marketing. It's really nice to have a partner sitting in the room with us now. And I think that the message that they've given us is that they really appreciate what's coming back now from SRA. So I think it's really great to have the management team that we've got at the hotel now. So.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thanks, Doug. Let's see, online. Kurt. Okay, Kurt, go again.
All right, thank you. I did say put me at the end of all speakers. My question relates to the 2021 audit. It's the second year in a row that I've heard that we had a clean audit. And I'm not a financially trained person, so I don't sure if that has a specific definition, but to me, it seems incomplete. Primarily because neither of those two audits seem to split the operating fund and the restricted reserve fund and really make any reconciliation between our internal statement and their audited statement. I'll send some comments to the new treasurer independently, but I just did want to raise that issue because a lot of people in the community aren't financially trained, but we do like to think that we know a little bit about a financial statement. And to me, what's being delivered in those audited statements are very, very poor.
So Kurt, this is Jim Fitzsimmons. I'll try to just briefly address your question. In the last few years, SRA has had two different auditors. I think in your time, we had one auditor who applied certain accounting standards and interpretations in the way in which the balance sheet was reflected in their audit. And for the last 2 years, we've had a different auditor who disagreed with what was done before they came on board and has taken a different tack. I don't think either auditor is wrong or is misstating anything, but when you look at the balance sheet from a few years ago and compare it to the one today, they don't even remotely look the same in terms of where funds are accounted for and what fund they're in and what the balances are. So one of the objectives, I think, for a good objective for the Finance Committee to focus on as we finish this year and enter next year is to pick a path, pick an auditor, pick a consistent manner of presenting financial information that jives between what we produce internally and the format that the auditor we work with chooses as well, so that we don't have these confusions. And so we are committed to do that, but your observation is absolutely accurate. And the balance sheet that we produce at SRA looks different than the audited balance sheet that we have had in the last couple of years. So this is one of my kind of hot buttons that we need to get the Finance Committee on and make some decisions and set a course and stay with it and make this issue go away.
Okay, thanks for the question, Kurt. Thanks, Jim, for the response. And who else do we have in the room? Anybody want to get up and speak? We're getting down to the last few minutes here. We're going to have to start shutting it down anyway, but no one's left here in person. Anybody online?
David.
Okay.
David,
good.
it's David.
One more shot at it.
It's David
Hello?
Eulis.
It's David Eulis. It's
I just
Rose.
want to. Okay, I'm David. I'll speak. I just want to clarify that it is in fact the Neighborhood Homeowner Association CCNRs which specify who is responsible for maintenance. And that varies from neighborhood to neighborhood. So the suggestion that it has anything to do with the organization of a official neighborhood homeowners association is incorrect. You need to read your CCNRs, and in most cases, the SRA is obligated, according to the legal title to your property, to maintain various things. In the case of SAG 1 and 2, where I live, it's responsible for maintenance of just about everything except for a common area we have. In an area like Royal Troon, it's responsible for everything because I don't think there are any common properties owned by the Neighborhood Homeowners Association. So that's not specified in the SRA CCNRs. What the SRA CCNRs say is that the organization is tiered and that the SRA is responsible for those things that are specified in the Neighborhood Homeowners Association CCNRs. So if you don't know the neighborhood CCNRs and you don't know yours, you're not going to know what you're going to giving up or what you're responsible for. So you do need to read those. You need to understand what the potential cost implications are by taking over maintenance for those neighborhoods which have responsibility for maintenance in their CCNRs. That would certainly cost anybody in SAG 1 and 2 money because we're not responsible for anything. The SRA is. That's what's specified in our legal title.
All right, Dave, thank you very much for the comments. I think the board caught all that.
Caught all that.
Everybody here?
Everybody here?
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know why
I don't know why we're getting
feedback again or whatever
that
is. Anything else there, Lori? Anybody else would like to speak?
would like to speak on all that.
This is George Hargenberger.
Hi, it's Rose.
It's Rose
Ironsides. I would like to have you please you put up please put up the slide the again. slide for again.
What's going on? So we're having a little bit of technical difficulty right now. Please let us give us a second here to try to figure it out. Yeah.
No, in public chat that they wish to speak.
Okay.
And we can call on them in order because we've got people just jumping in. And
Yeah, so the way this works is if you would like to speak online, could you go to the chat function and let Lori know that you would like to speak so we can get you in line instead of everybody trying to jump in all at once. So.
Okay, so we've got now 3 people. I've got Kay Klontz had asked to speak next.
Kay Klontz, would you please state where you're from and please ask your questions or?
Yes, it's Keith Klontz. I'm in St. Andrews Green. I just moved in the last year, so this is all first round for me. And I just wanted to put in a request, and I'll form it in the state of my question, I guess. And that is it possible for the management of SRA to find a mechanism and a report to be accountable for the increase in fees? And in particular, what I'm saying is we want a return on investment. We want to know our money has good stewardship and has gone to what you have said that it needs to go to. And if, somehow, somewhere, I hope there is a way that you can put a value assessment on this thing called the good life here in Semiahmoo. And I think there is a way to put a value on that and a way to put a return on investment on the increase in fees that you have asked for. And not just come back the next year to say, look, we spent the money, here's what we spent it on, therefore we need more. So next year, this time, my question is there a way that you can go to work and determine the value of a return that we're getting as homeowners for the increase in fees that you're asking for?
An interesting question, one that maybe the finance committee could look at, Jim. As far as how we could measure that, I'm thinking just for instance, Keith, just what sometimes, let's say the money that is spent for, say, keeping staff, how are we going to measure that? They decided to stay instead of leave. If they left, I could probably come up with numbers of what it costs to try to recruit and all that. But I mean, it's a good question whether or not we have a mechanism for trying to measure. I mean, it's always good for us to try to measure everything if we can to see.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm asking for. Yeah. It's going to be a matter of triangulation. It's not going to be a direct measurement. The more we're spending on safety and security, how are we doing this year, next year, or this current year compared to last year, and measure that against Blaine or Birch Bay average.
Yeah,
and we're spending more money there than we should have improving safety and security, for instance.
Well, those are, maybe getting some key performance indicators, some dashboard measurements of these sort of things would be something that we could try to work on. Do you have any experience with that? Would you like to volunteer?
I only have user experience on that, in creating them, but mostly I can help review them. I'm not good at creating them.
Well, good. Well, it's a really good question and I appreciate it. But that's something we'll definitely think about and maybe we'll see on a committee here soon. Thanks for your question.
Yeah. And the answer, I hope, is that we as a community are happy to give you the money because we know it's gone to good use.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Keith. Next question
is from Dana.
From Dana. Dana, could you state your whole name and then what community you're from?
Yeah, this is Dana Dupar. I'm in St. Andrews Green 3. Pretty sure, newer resident, a little over a year, but I thank everybody for all the volunteer work. I know it's a lot of work. I haven't volunteered, so it's hard to criticize those that have. But kind of looking at the vote results. And so for those that cared to vote, I'll put it that way, because there's, I don't know how many people that didn't vote, 36%. For those of us that cared to vote, the budget didn't pass based on a simple majority. And I know there's, the different rules, the percentage of et cetera, but just from a simple majority of the people that voted, the budget did not pass. So I would ask or hope that the board will take that into account when they're prioritizing the spend in 2023. We all know the year won't go, 2023 will not go how we planned, right? It never does. So yeah, hopefully they'll take into account that there wasn't a majority approval of the budget, and as we decide what to spend, what not to spend in 23, we take that into account. Thank you.
Okay, we appreciate the comment, and I'm sure the board will review the budget and how they spend through the year. And I can just say one thing, that a budget is a number, is a plan expressed in numbers. And, we do our best to try to figure out what we're going to spend that money on, and we try to stick to it. This year was one in which, there's things come up, and we have to take care of them. And, but yeah, I'm sure that's something that the board will review thoroughly. We have new members that are going to be joining the board. And so starting January 1st, that will be part of the process. Anybody else online?
It's online.
George Hargenreich.
Hey, this is George Hargenreiter. I'm over in Drayton. Was it Drayton Hillside? Lori will have to tell me. I haven't even been out there long enough yet to know.
Harbor Ridge.
There we go. Thank you. So a quick question based on what I think I heard, just some clarification with the talk about banning some things, some of the fertilizers, and potentially some gas-powered lawn tools, so on. And my question is this: when we look at some of these potential ordinances, whatever you want to call them, coming to the board, what's the process for having them reviewed for the legality of what we can actually ban or not ban, given that we're not a governmental organization? We can't make and limit the code established by the state or the county.
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Anybody like
to take that one on? I mean, I'm sure we would have something
reviewed by our legal counsel as far as what our authority, how far that we can take that. Any board members have anything to add to that? Jeff?
Okay, well, I see Stan's in the audience from the environmental committee. I'm probably not the best person to talk about the legality part of it, but I know from, if you're talking about the glyphosates in a lot of these chemicals that are out there, in a lot of municipalities, states, even countries are banning those or already have banned those because of the adverse impact on health, on our water, our groundwater, and so on. So this is something, there's a lot of litigation that's out there against the chemical companies that are making these things. This is already precedent. So there are a lot of legal cases that have already been adjudicated. And in most cases, as I know, the plaintiffs have been successful with their cases. So this is something that we're just following. We think it's probably from a safety standpoint. Yeah, Steve is anxious to jump in.
Yeah, Steve Hansen, ASC, just a general comment. We are generally allowed within the community to propagate rules and regulations that are more restrictive than the cities and the states.
And they're
that-
authorized
in the CCNRs.
Yeah, so I will tell you
the
this.
The
neighborhoods
neighborhoods
are allowed to be more
restrictive than we are. And in fact, Great Hillside is much more restrictive
with
with respect to environmental issues.
Yeah, so I will add this, and I'm not challenging anybody. I'm all for the cleanup, don't get me wrong. But having been out here on the East Coast and been on the board of directors for a very large homeowners association, I would say be very, very careful, because there are certain things you can restrict and certain things you can't. And when it gets challenged in the courts, it becomes a very costly litigation piece, which I'm going to give you just a quick analogy. It's old. And that was a lot of the homeowners associations used to ban.
You were past the 3 minutes.
Could you speak
Could you speak to this again at another time?
Or if
Or
anybody's
if anybody's willing to yield 3 minutes?
We can
definitely we would like to hear from you on this. It's just we've exceeded the 3 minutes.
Yep.
But please
I'll be
join the
skipping.
board.
Join the board meeting or
contact us
contact us afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you very much for your comments.
Do we have any?
We have more?
Monica
Monica Kiley.
Would you like to ask a question, comments?
Yes. Is it possible for you to please put up the slide regarding the budget approval? I have a question.
Is that Monica?
Well, it's actually Rose Ironside. I'm here with Monica.
And, oh, okay, and where do you live?
I'm sorry, we live in Melrose Cottages, St. Andrews Green 2.
Monica, can you see the slide?
Yes, thank you.
I'm
This
sorry.
is Rose speaking. You note on the slides that the total votes cast was 2,073 and a half. Votes to approve was 917. Votes to reject was 1156. I want to know how it was passed if you had more votes rejected than approved it.
Okay, that's a good question. So the RCW, if you go to the Revised Code of Washington 6495-25, what that requires, and I think this was passed in 2018 for all homeowners associations in Washington State, is that all eligible votes is the 3,323. That's the
Correct.
weighted, okay? And so you need to have 50% of that number to reject. So you have to have 50%. So we'd need what, almost 1,700 votes to
You
reject.
need 1661.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. You've done the math. So yeah, you didn't get that number. You had 1,156.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even though, and that's a really good question, because if you go to our CCNRs, if you looked in the CCNRs, and this is something we have to do some housekeeping, we have to clean that up. So this legislation was passed in 2018, but our CCNRs don't reflect that. So if you went to our CCNRs, yeah, you would think, hey, what's going on here? Yeah, but it's a state law.
That's the reason I'm asking the question.
Yeah, well, great, good question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else in the room or anybody online?
There you go.
Nobody else? Okay. Yes, Jeff.
So if there's no more questions, I would just like at this time to have us recognize the outstanding work that Doug Woods has done as president of this SRA. You spend tireless amounts of your time, hours and hours on phone calls and emails and meetings and organizing meetings with the city of Blaine. And I just think sometimes we just don't fully appreciate the dedication that a volunteer, we are volunteers, has done. So I just wanted to make sure that we recognize Doug for your outstanding contribution to this. And I haven't forgotten about Steve Haynes. So my next person is Steve Haynes. And Steve is, if you want to know who's at the SRA, you can look in the parking lot and you can see Steve's car. It's there all the time. Steve is extremely dedicated to this community. And it's been a real pleasure for me personally to have worked over the last year or so with Steve. I've learned a tremendous amount from you, Steve. And his contribution to this community is huge. The work of the ASC it's very voluminous. And there are a lot of meetings. And so I think we all owe Steve a great debt of gratitude for the time that he's given to this community, and hopefully will still continue to give to this community. So, Steve. And I don't want to forget any other retiring board members, Jane as well. It's been a real pleasure working with you as well on the Safety and Security Committee. We were co-chairs, and then Jane took over and stuff. So, but I think, you know, we're all volunteers. We love this community. We're homeowners in this community first and foremost, then we're volunteers. And we do want to do the right thing. And so we look forward to your active participation in making sure that we all move in the right direction. So thank you all.
I think with those comments, we can probably adjourn this meeting. Would everyone agree? Yes. Okay. Looks like that was unanimous. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all who were online, spending the time with us, and the votes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.